There are people who spend their whole lives chasing money and fame, hoping that when they achieve everything, they will be happy. But then, when they reach the top, they realize that their hearts are still empty. Their souls are still constantly worried. They own many things, but they do not really feel full. This is the story of a rich man, a man who everyone looks at and thinks he has everything. But hidden behind that flashy shell are sleepless nights, long days full of tension because of the fear of losing what he has. And then, a seemingly simple meeting with a beggar on the street changed everything. A short conversation, but opened a new door, helping him understand that happiness does not come from what we own, but from the way we feel this life. A rich man lived in a big city where everything around him sparkled with luxury. He had everything that others dreamed of: a luxurious mansion, expensive cars, a bank account full of money. But deep down, he was not happy. Every day, he worried about making more money, keeping his assets, and was afraid of losing what he had. His sleep was no longer peaceful. Worries kept following him, making him more and more tired. One morning, on his way to work, he saw a beggar sitting on the sidewalk. This man wore ragged clothes, but his face was radiant with a gentle smile. In his hand was a small bowl, in which there were only a few coins. What surprised the rich man was that despite being so poor, the beggar still had a satisfied smile. Not understanding, the rich man walked up and asked, "You live like this and still can laugh?" The beggar looked at him, his eyes gentle. "Sir, I laugh because I feel lucky." "Lucky? You have no money, no house, no thoughts, and you call that lucky?" The beggar gently replied, "Imagine me and think I have nothing, but I have hot sun in the morning, cool wind in the afternoon. I have good people who give me some food, and most importantly, I don't worry about tomorrow. I live in the present, enjoying every moment that life gives me." The rich man was silent. All his life he had been chasing money and fame, but he had never really taken advantage of a day. His meals were always served at fancy restaurants, but he had never really felt the taste of the food. Every day, he walked along beautiful roads, but he rarely stopped to observe the scenery around him. The beggar asked, "Do you think you are happy?" The rich man could not answer immediately. He had everything, but he always felt lacking. He always wanted more, and the fear of loss never left his mind. The beggar smiled. "Beggars, you know, there are things that cannot be bought with money. You can buy a good night's sleep, but you cannot buy a good night's sleep. You can buy delicious food, but you cannot buy a delicious appetite. You can buy a big house, but you cannot buy peace of mind." Those words were like a wake-up call for the rich man. He suddenly realized that he had been caught up in the whirlpool of ambition, constantly chasing after external things while forgetting the most important thing: peace and contentment from within. That evening, he returned home with a strange mood. He stood on the balcony looking down at the city. The bright lights no longer satisfied him as before. He remembered the smile of the beggar, remembered the peace in that person's eyes. He asked himself, "Am I really living or just existing?" The next day, he decided to return to the same place. The beggar was still there, still with a gentle smile. This time, the rich man did not ask anything. He just sat down next to the beggar. "Yesterday, you taught me a great lesson. but I still do not understand how to let go of the worries in my heart. I have too many things to lose." The beggar looked at him with understanding eyes. Letting go does not mean giving up everything outside, but giving up the attachment in the mind. You can continue your work, continue to live in your beautiful house, but if you know how to cherish every moment, know how to share and love, then you will no longer be controlled by fear. The rich man thought deeply. He suddenly realized that up until now, he had only accumulated material wealth, but forgot to accumulate peace of mind. From that day on, the man began to change. He spent more time enjoying life. Instead of worrying about possessions, he learned to be grateful for what he had. Instead of focusing on what he had not achieved, he began to help others, not for fame, but for the true joy of sharing. One day, while walking on a familiar street, he came across a homeless child shivering in the cold. Before, he would have just passed by, but today he stopped, bought the child a warm coat and a hot meal. Looking at the child's happy smile, he suddenly realized that joy does not come from owning more, but from giving. Gradually, he felt true happiness, a feeling that no amount of money could buy before. One day, he returned to the familiar street, but the beggar was nowhere to be found. He asked around, but no one knew where he had gone. He stood still for a while, his eyes following the people passing by. A gentle breeze blew by, bringing with it a sense of peace that he had never felt before. He no longer felt regret or disappointment, because he understood that the encounter was not a coincidence. The beggar had left behind a priceless gift, a lesson about happiness, about fulfillment that does not come from wealth, but from the soul. He smiled slightly, then walked away quietly, carrying a new light in his heart. The rich man stood still in the middle of the bustling crowd. He looked at the familiar street, where there used to be a beggar with a gentle smile, but now there was only an empty space. Even though he would never see that person again, the words and lessons he received were deeply engraved in his heart. He walked slowly, feeling each gust of wind blowing by, each gentle ray of sunlight shining down. Before, he was always in a hurry, only seeing the things he wanted, the goals he had not achieved. Now, he began to realize the beauty of simple things that he had never noticed before. On the way home, he stopped at a small roadside shop, ordered a cup of hot tea. He sat down, watched life pass by before him, feeling the warmth radiating from the cup of tea in his hand. He realized that all this time, he had been busy chasing after distant things, forgetting how to live each moment to the fullest. From that day on, his life changed. He no longer cared about how much money he earned, but more importantly, he learned to live with gratitude. He spent time watching the sunrise, listening to the birds chirping every morning, enjoying every meal with appreciation. He helped those around him, not to show off his wealth, but because he understood that true joy comes from sharing. The lesson from the beggar is not only about letting go, but also about how to look at life. Happiness does not come from owning a lot, but from appreciating what we have. We can have everything, but still feel lacking, or have very little but feel full. Everything depends on each person's mind. In life, there are things that money cannot buy: a good night's sleep, a peaceful mind, a heart full of love. When we know how to stop, live more slowly, and enjoy every moment, happiness will naturally come. The rich man understood that he did not need to give up his wealth, but only needed to change the way he lived. And from there, he moved on with a lighter heart, a more peaceful smile, because he had found what he had been looking for all this time: inner peace.